Just a few days ago, I met this man whom I greatly admire. He's a Swedish physicist, Gustav Bjornstrand, and he told me that he no longer watches television, he doesn't read newspapers, and he doesn't read magazines. He's completely cut them out of his life because he really does feel that we're living in some kind of Orwellian nightmare now, and that everything that you hear now contributes to turning you into a robot. And when I was at Findhorn, I met this extraordinary English tree expert who had devoted his life to saving trees. Just got back from Washington, lobbying to save the redwoods. He's 84 years old. He always travels with a backpack because he never knows where he's going to be tomorrow. And when I met him at Findhorn, he said to me, "Where are you from?" And I said, "New York." He said, "Ah, New York, yes, that's a very interesting place. Do you know a lot of New Yorkers who keep talking about the fact that they want to leave but never do?" And I said, "Oh, yes." And he said, "Why do you think they don't leave?" I gave him different banal theories. He said, "Oh, I don't think it's that way at all." He said, "I think that New York is the new model for the new concentration camp, where the camp has been built by the inmates themselves, and the inmates are the guards, and they have this pride in this thing they've built. They've built their own prison, and so they exist in a state of schizophrenia, where they are both guards and prisoners, and as a result, they no longer have, having been lobotomized, the capacity to leave the prison they've made, or to even see it as a prison." And then he went into his pocket and he took out a seed for a tree and he said, "This is a pine tree." He put it in my hand and he said, "Escape before it's too late." See, actually for 2 or 3 years now, Chiquita and I have had this very unpleasant feeling that we really should get out. And we really should feel like Jews in Germany in the late 30s. Get out of here. Of course, the problem is where to go, because it seems quite obvious that the whole world is going in the same direction. See, I think it's quite possible that the 1960s represented the last burst of the human being before he was extinguished, and that this is the beginning of the rest of the future now, and that from now on there'll simply be all these robots walking around, feeling nothing, thinking nothing, and there'll be nobody left almost to remind them that there once was a species called a human being, with feelings and thoughts, and that history and memory are right now being erased, and soon nobody will really remember that life existed on the planet. Now, of course, Bjornstrand feels that there's really almost no hope, and that we're probably going back to a very savage, lawless, terrifying period. Findhorn people see it a little differently. They're feeling that there'll be these pockets of light springing up in different parts of the world, and that these will be, in a way, invisible planets on this planet. And that as we, or the world, grow colder, we can take invisible space journeys to these different planets, refuel for what it is we need to do on the planet itself, and come back. And it's their feeling that there have to be centers now where people can come and reconstruct a new future for the world. And when I was talking to Gustav Bjornstrand, he was saying that actually these centers are growing up everywhere now. And that what they're trying to do, which is what Findhorn was trying to do, and in a way, what I was trying to do, I mean, these things can't be given names, but in a way, these are all attempts at creating a new kind of school or a new kind of monastery. And Bjornstrand talks about the concept of reserves, islands of safety, where history can be remembered and the human being can continue to function in order to maintain the species through a dark age. In other words, we're talking about an underground, which did exist in a different way during the Dark Ages among the mystical orders of the Church. And the purpose of this underground is to find out how to preserve the light, life, the culture, how to keep things living. You see, I keep thinking that what we need is a new language, a language of the heart, languages in the Polish forest where language wasn't needed. Some kind of language between people that is a new kind of poetry. That's the poetry of the dancing bee that tells us where the honey is. And I think that in order to create that language, you're going to have to learn how you can go through a looking glass into another kind of perception where you have that sense of being united to all things, and suddenly you understand everything.
Je pense qu'il faut changer de voie, mais on ne peut pas changer la voie par décret. Et comment s'opère dans l'histoire les changements de voie? C'est toujours des déviants, des dissidents, que ce soit religieux comme Jésus ou Mohamed, que ce soit politique comme Marx ou Proudhon, que ce soit en sciences, où il y avait Descartes, Gassendi, Galilée, Bacon. Au début, c'est rien du tout, et puis ces mouvements se développent parce qu'ils correspondent à des besoins et deviennent des forces formidables. La science, qui n'était que le fait de quelques individus au XVIIe siècle, est devenue une force formidable. Le socialisme est une force formidable, les religions, etc. Donc, il faut savoir commencer. Mais on commence, on n'est même pas au commencement du commencement, mais le monde grouille d'initiatives créatrices qui traduisent des possibilités futures, que ce soit dans l'agriculture, l'agriculture biologique, que ce soit dans les villes, une urbanisation qui humanise la ville, que ce soit dans tous les domaines. Et à mon avis, le monde va changer parce que si toutes les réformes commencent en même temps et convergent et se réunissent comme des ruisseaux, font des rivières et des rivières un fleuve. Parce que l'expérience nous montre que des réformes économiques et sociales ne suffisent pas si la vie quotidienne n'est pas transformée, n'est pas améliorée, si les rapports personnels entre les humains ne sont pas meilleurs. Mais nous savons aussi que toutes les tentatives pour améliorer les rapports entre humains, que ce soit par la prédiction religieuse dans des communes, échouent. Donc ce sont les deux à la fois qui doivent progresser et s'entraider l'un l'autre. Et moi je pense qu'au terme, enfin à un moment donné, viendra ce qu'on peut appeler une métamorphose, c'est-à-dire, je prends l'exemple d'une chenille qui, dans une chrysalide, s'auto-transforme, c'est-à-dire s'auto-détruit et s'auto-reconstruit, et des ailes lui poussent qui lui permettent de voler. Or, dans l'histoire humaine, nous avons connu une métamorphose où des petites sociétés archaïques, de chasseurs-ramasseurs qui étaient répandus sur la planète, ont pu en 5 points des globes se regrouper sous des facteurs multiples et brusquement apparu une nouvelle société avec ville, avec agriculture, avec État, avec armée, avec philosophie, avec religion, avec science, avec art, avec esclavage, avec guerre. Donc, nous avons déjà connu une métamorphose. Aujourd'hui, l'histoire est épuisée parce qu'elle a trop de possibilités d'anéantissement et de destruction. Donc il faut une nouvelle évolution.
Et vous êtes confiant dans cet avenir?
Non.
La désintégration n'est pas le plus probable. Il y a quand même une voie de métamorphose.
C'est-à-dire le probable et la catastrophe, mais l'improbable est souvent arrivé dans l'histoire humaine. Songez que la démocratie est le fruit de quelque chose d'absolument improbable, c'est-à-dire une petite cité grecque qui 2 fois a failli être anéantie par l'Empire perse au 5e siècle avant Jésus-Christ.
Absolument.
Elle a survécu. Et 40 ans plus tard, en elle naissait la démocratie et la philosophie. Ça n'a pas duré longtemps, puisque Athènes elle-même a été dominée par Philippe de Macédoine. Mais la démocratie a ressuscité quelque temps à Rome, plus tard, quelque temps au Moyen-Âge en Italie. Et puis, vous voyez, maintenant, c'est un problème devenu mondial et une nécessité mondiale. Donc, les choses commencent modestement, mais, et je dirais de façon improbable, parce que personne n'aurait prévu que Athènes résisterait à l'Empire perse, eh bien, je crois que c'est là où j'ai ma foi dans l'improbable, mais l'espérance n'est pas une certitude, c'est l'espérance.
For the moment, it's quite strange to see that there are so many people asking to stop, to don't negotiate.
I don't have a text. It's very interesting to sing with you, but we don't have a text.
You will be strong and stand with me. Beyond the barricades, is there a world you long to see? And joining the fight will be your right to be free. Do you hear the people sing, singing the song of angry men? This is the music of the people who will not be slaves again. When the beating of to stop when tomorrow comes.
It's very strange that it's impossible to open the
Join our crusade, who will be strong and stand with me. Beyond the barricades, is there a world you long to see? Then join in the fight that will give you the right to be free. Do you hear the people sing, singing a song of angry men? It is the music of the people who will not be slaves again. When the beating of your heart echoes the beating of the drums, there is a life about to start when tomorrow comes. Will you join in our crusade? Who will be strong and stand with me? Beyond the barricade, is there a world you long to see? Then join in the fight that will give you the right to be free. Do you hear the people sing, singing a song of angry men? When the beating of your heart echoes the beating of the drums, there is a life about to start when tomorrow comes. Do you hear the people sing, sing a song of angry men? This is the music of the people who will not be slaves again. When the beating of your heart echoes the beating of the drums, there is a life about to start when tomorrow comes.
And what this treaty does is basically put the right to profit on top of any other right.
Do you hear the people sing, sing